We should give 3 cheers for Conor, the leader of the student revolt. Chief negotiator. We might get you to talk about that a bit for the publicity. Yeah. How are you doing? So welcome everybody. I see lots of candidates in front of me. Not so much media, but lots of candidates. And the purpose of this is to launch our local election campaign and candidates, of which we have many. And this manifesto, which is all about putting an end to Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. In fact, it says evict Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and put campaigners on our council. At the back of this document, you'll see all our candidates listed. We have a very impressive lineup of candidates right throughout the country, and we're very proud of them and want to thank them all very much for putting themselves forward, for putting themselves through the mill of going for election. But the reason they're doing it is because we're serious in People Before Profit about providing real, genuine, grassroots, bottom-up opposition to the agenda of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, which has dominated this country since the foundation of the state. Way past their time, they need to be gone from the seat of government, and that's why our title is to evict Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and put campaigners into local authority councils. And all of these people who are listed here, who you see in front of you, are genuine fighters, campaigners, fight for the working class, fight for justice, fight for equality. And as we go through them, I will introduce them. And the reason we need campaigners in there is because it's very easy. I've done it for 7 or 8 years on the council and nearly 8 years in the Dáil now. It's very easy to go into your position as an elected rep and go through the motions and, adhere to the agenda and put forward your questions and do it in a routine way. What's harder, but what's much more important and more effective, is to go in there fighting and really kicking up a stink and having support behind you of your community, of groups of workers, of people who are victimised or marginalised in this society, and bring them along through the political process to make a difference, to make change. And that's what all of these candidates are about. And I see all the faces in front of me who hopefully can say a few words as we go along. So sitting at the table here with me is a selection of our candidates, and I think I will start actually, not in order of priority, but in order of kind of political relevance, with Conor Reddy, who's sitting at the end of the table, because as well as putting himself forward for the campaigning councillor for the elections, Conor is also a leader of the student encampment in Trinity that yesterday won a very significant victory. And I think it'd be good, Conor, if you could talk about both running for the elections and what happened in Trinity. Thanks very much.
Yeah, so I guess to start, yesterday we had an historic day, the first Irish university to give on BDS in response to student protest or campaigning. I've been involved in boycott, divestment and sanctions work on the university since I was an undergrad in 2015. So we're at this a long time. We fought for a very long time, and obviously right now facing a genocide in Gaza and the worst of the final stages of that genocide, the invasion of Rafah. We felt maybe a couple of weeks ago that we needed to up the ante. All around the world, students have been rising up, campuses in the US, campuses in Europe now, demanding that universities end their complicity in the genocide, divest from Israel, end academic ties, and cut all procurement links that universities might have. So for the last 5 days, 6 days actually, you kind of lose track of time when you're in there. We've been in encampment in Trinity, people will have seen, in the middle of the university. It's been an amazing experience. We've been inundated with public support. There have been hundreds of students and staff members that have come down and done shifts at the camp, stayed in the camp, and led on the protests that we've had on the back of it. I think what it has been is a vindication of people power. People power, students, staff, and the general public coming together to tell a public institution that it's not good enough, that divestment has to happen, and happen it has. So yesterday we were very happy to kind of get to the stage that we got commitments from the university. There's going to be a total divestment from all Israeli companies in Trinity. So that's a massive step. Something that we couldn't have imagined even 2 weeks ago, when we were told that the university had to maintain space for diverse opinions, that the university was neutral in the genocide, that it wouldn't take a position at all. So a indication of people power, and something that I think now will spill over hopefully onto other campuses, but also into communities. There's been enormous work done the length and breadth of the country on Palestine, huge numbers on the streets, of course, as part of the national demonstrations, but a whole load of other activity within communities as well. In my own area, we've had solidarity events, dinners, fundraisers, there's music and cultural events, and I think people before profit in every community in the country have been part of that. But I think in a more general way, what we've won in Trinity is a vindication of people power as an approach to any political problem. I'm part of, I guess, a lockdown generation, a generation where 70% of people under the age of 35 still live at home with their parents, where those of us that don't are paying huge portions of our incomes on rent. We're completely almost locked out of the possibility of home ownership in a way that no generation really in recent living memory before us has. So I think there's a huge anger there on housing. There's a huge anger at work. People in my generation who teach in our schools and work in our hospitals are at breaking point. The pressures of understaffing and underfunding and investment in public services had a huge toll on people. Most of my friends now are either going or have gone to other places, to Australia or to Canada. And I think this local election, a year out from the general election, is an opportunity to put it up to the government, to say to them, we're going to evict you before you evict us. That's, I think, what we have an opportunity to do in this election. We have an opportunity to use our platforms to build people power, to build campaigns. At the moment in my own area, and I know other people before profit candidates in the elections are doing the same. We have an energetic campaign on vacancy. In Ballymun and Finglas, there's 110 vacant council-owned houses. That needs to change, and it won't change, of course, if the council stays the way it is. The only way that that's going to change is by putting campaigners onto Dublin City Council and every other council in the country to fight, to bring these houses back into use, to build public housing on public land, and to start making a dent on the other social crisis that we've got in Irish society. So I think a big victory in Trinity yesterday, a lesson that we can all learn from whatever we're doing, and hopefully now an opportunity in June to get rid of this government as soon as we can. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Conor. Really very proud of the student. It's a huge historical breakthrough that we've had, and well done. And we'll be raising it today at Leaders, the whole situation with the occupation and the need for the government to take a leaf out of the students' book, literally. Melissa Halpin is 8 years now a councillor. 12 years, good night. She's nearly veteran, and she's a councillor in the Dún Laoghaire area and has played a very important role in building grassroots movements right throughout her period as a councillor, and she's running again in Dún Laoghaire. And there's a few more Dún Laoghaire candidates here. So do you want to say a few words, Melissa?
Yeah, well, just really following on from what Conor was saying about, we need to put more campaigners on the council. And that's not just because if you've more campaigners, they'll vote in a particular way. It's because when we talk about campaigners, it's about people who will work with their communities, work with people out there to try and build a campaign around an issue. We're not just about going in, putting down a proposal on the council and then hoping people will vote for it and giving out if they vote against it. We're about building a mass campaign and using our positions in the council to be able to give a louder voice to that. So, Conor has talked about what that means around the Trinity boycott campaign. But say in the last number of years that I've been a councillor, what it's meant has been the water charges. In every single water charges group around the country, our councillors and our reps in local areas were dug into that campaign, and of course our TDs were dug into that campaign, and we're building support in the communities and activating people, because when people feel part of something, they fight harder and we can win. We won with the water charges, again with repeal. I think if you looked at all the campaigns in Dublin at the time of repeal, all the local campaigns, there was a people before profit rep at the head of every single one of them. And that's what we mean about putting campaigners in the council. And it's not just on the big national issues like water charges and repeal, or on the cost of living as well. But locally, that's what we do too. We mirror it. And sometimes it's smaller campaigns. Sometimes in the case of Dún Laoghaire, we had a very long, and it still rolls on, our Save Our Seafront campaign, which successfully stopped a 10-storey private apartment block being built right on the seafront. And now we have a fantastic public amenity there. We have to still fight for that to become accessible to all, because disgracefully it was left without proper disability access. But that only happened because we had public meetings, we had marches, we got the community around us, And people talk about the great Save Seaford March, which is now back in 2005, nearly 20 years ago. But people remember it because there was so much commitment to it from the local areas. And I suppose what we're working on now in the council in my area, one of the big things is the local sports and community facilities and resources. Our areas are crying out for these resources. And it's fantastic to see sports is doing so well in Ireland, and women's sports in particular is fantastic, flying ahead in Ireland. And every single place they're fighting for pitches, they're fighting for places, clubs, their own clubhouses. Everybody is sharing. Half the clubhouses are falling down, or you have these tiny little, like basically mini prisons that they put on the corner and say that'll be good enough for you. You can change in there. They don't even give them showers. They want them to settle with that. We fought with the Monkstown Boxing Club, and they have their own brand new clubhouse that is being built now. And that's because we stood with them. We didn't just accept that we would go into council, pass a motion, and wait for it slowly to creep up the project programme, and eventually the club will get. We said, no, this club is one of the most deserving clubs in the area, and it needs one now. We're doing the same around the Pierce Rovers football club, which want to do more than just be a football club, want to give back to the community that they come from. And I think we can, Madeleine is going to speak more about housing, but so in Dún Laoghaire, the St. Helens, there's a very long campaign we've been having again about the St. Helens to stop a vulture fund evicting tenants at St. Helens. And we went in, we passed motions at the council, but nothing was happening until we got the community together, protested and put weight behind what we're doing. So when we talk about put a campaigner in the council, it's not just because the campaigner in the council is going to be better than Fianna Fáil in the council. It's because that campaigner is actually going to build campaigns with local people, with local communities to fight for the resource. And that's what I hope all of us will be elected, and that we'll have all communities, all different councils campaigning on issues that affect local people.
Thanks, Melissa. So Jess Spear, brand new candidate for Tallaght Central, and we're dying to hear how you're getting on, Jess. It's a tough project for you there, especially when you're brand new, but I'm sure you'll have an impact. So do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I think the thing that I want to focus on most is the need to speed up climate action. So I'm a former climate scientist. I now work as a local organizer. But it's important to point out that the councils have a real role to play here on climate action, particularly ensuring fairness. And one of the main things that they're responsible for is retrofitting council homes. In South Dublin County Council, there are 10,000 council homes, and they've only retrofitted 2,000 of them over the past 10 years. Their target this year is only 83 homes. When we're looking, at the abyss of climate catastrophe, it's just scandalous. I mean, household emissions in Ireland are some of the highest in Europe. We not only need to cut emissions, but obviously retrofitting people's homes would also reduce energy bills. And Melissa mentioned the cost of living crisis. I'm knocking on a lot of doors, and it's still an issue for a lot of people. Obviously, with the weather getting a bit warmer, people can turn things down. But nonetheless, they know come wintertime, because their home has not been retrofitted, they're looking at huge energy bills. The way that you can pay for that retrofitting program is by increasing the rates on big corporations. Amazon is in South Dublin County. There's no reason why we shouldn't be increasing taxes on Amazon to pay for the services that we need and to rapidly speed up climate action. And speaking of Amazon, one of the key priorities for us, particularly in South Dublin, but I think all across the country, is to ban more data centers. I mean, they are driving up energy demand right at the time that we need to be reducing it. They're not only threatening blackouts, but they're making it much, much harder for us to transition away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy. I mean, these are just three things that the council could be focused on in order to speed up climate action. There's many, many more, but these are some of the things that we're going to be focusing on in the campaign.
Very good. And that leads neatly into introducing Madeleine Johansson, who actually did successfully get plans in the county development plan to exclude any further data centre development. And again, this is an example of people before profit campaigning from below. Interesting, Jess is from Seattle, Madeline's from Sweden. We're not a nationalist party at all, and they're doing a great job. And Madeline is running again. This will be your third time, second time. So well done, Madeline.
Thanks, Breed. I've been involved in people for profit and politics for a long time, but I think the last couple of years have been really important for me because I've been personally involved in a fight against eviction, been organising the tenants of my block against mass eviction. And I'm just one of tens of thousands of people in this country who are facing housing uncertainty. So we have, of course, the almost 14,000 who are currently in emergency accommodation. But then we have tens of thousands of people. We don't know the exact numbers, but we know that there's tens of thousands of people who are couch surfing, who are living in overcrowded conditions all across this country and have no access to proper housing, affordable housing that they need. And it's very clear that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael's housing policy have utterly failed. And that's why we are saying that it's time to evict Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, not just out of the Dáil and out of the government, but also out of our councils. Because it is possible to solve the housing crisis. Just look across this country and you will see that there's 160,000 vacant properties, homes that could be used for people to live in, but they are left vacant. 65,000 of those were also vacant in 2016. That means that they were been left for at least 6 years vacant. This is completely disgraceful. And actually, there is something that our councils and our councillors can do to solve this. Councils have the power to compulsory purchase derelict properties. But there is a problem because the mainstream parties will not do it. The councillors will not do it. We've seen it in South Dublin where I proposed a motion to compulsory purchase all 10 sites that are on the derelict sites register in South Dublin, and the establishment parties all voted against it. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Green Party, Labour Party all voted against my motion. Despite that, I kept pushing because I'm not one to give up. So I pushed locally to get 2 houses in Palmerstown that have been derelict for 10 years or so to be compulsory purchased by the council. And the council has now agreed to do that. And I think that shows that when there is pressure put from councillors, but also from people on the streets, you can get things to happen. So tackling vacancy and dereliction is one thing that we can do to solve the housing crisis. The other thing is that we need to build social and real affordable housing on publicly owned land. The state and councils own a huge amount of land across the country, but they're refusing to use it to actually build social and real affordable homes. Instead, we've had a policy of selling off publicly owned land to private developers for tiny amounts of social housing. For example, in Kilcarbury, in South Dublin, a big tract of land for about 1,000 units was sold off to a private developer for 30% social housing. There are now apartments being rented out by private landlords on that site for €2,000 per month. This is public land that should have been used to house people who are on the housing waiting list. And we have more or less more than 10,000 people on the social housing waiting list in South Dublin. It's an absolute disgrace, and People Before Profit is the only party that has consistently voted against the sell-off of public land to private developers. In order to build on large-scale social and affordable housing on public land, we do need a state-owned construction company that can go out and actually deliver, that can also give good jobs to construction workers with decent paying conditions, and pensions for construction workers. If we do these things, we can solve the housing crisis. And that's why I would say to anyone who thinks that housing is the absolute biggest issue in this country at the moment, that you should look at who are the people who have been fighting for housing over the last 10 years. And you will find that it's People Before Profit who have done so. So you should go and vote for People Before Profit in the local elections. I would also call for anyone who wants to fight on housing to attend the rally at the Custom House at 2:30 p.m. on the 25th of May, on the Saturday, where there'll be a rally where tenants, housing activists will be coming together to hold a rally to make sure that we put housing back on the agenda, and we do not allow the establishment to get away with what they're doing in making people homeless, basically abandoning people who are facing eviction when they refused to keep the eviction ban, and haven't introduced any protection for renters, and not delivered any housing that is in any way affordable for people who want to buy houses as well. So yeah, vote People for Profit and come to the rally on the 25th.
Very good, Madeline. Very good. And well done on your fight on the eviction for tiny houses. It's a great campaign. And last but not least is Rory Fahy, who's come all the way up from Limerick. And Rory is a double whammy here because he's running for the council, but he's also running historically in the first election for a directly elected mayor in Limerick City. And it'll be a very interesting campaign, Rory, because a lot of challenges in Limerick, particularly with the health crisis and the hospital being a war zone down there. So you want to fill us in?
I think it's important to talk about the historical things. That's what's being used by the government now to advertise it, saying, "Oh, history will be made." So that's their tagline for, vote for the mayor and history will be made. But as we've heard from everyone here, these people power campaigns is what really makes history. People getting organised, people fighting together, people uniting for real change. Because in reality, there was a promise made that a lot of powers would be devolved to the council in Limerick to make decisions locally, to decide how spending happens locally. But in reality, it's the same problems you have up here with the CEO and Dublin City Council and repeated CEOs coming through, where the power mostly remains within the executive. Very little has been transferred over to a new directly elected position. Some of the things that are brought in and called like major changes are that the budget be presented by the new directly elected mayor as opposed to by the council executive. Presenting the budget when the spending is almost pre-decided in Dublin through national programmes, and you don't really have that local intake within it. And the same with the National Development Plan. You have the local development plan based on the National Development Plan, and again, presented by the directly elected mayor. But, what goes into that plan should be decided locally, and people should work on it together locally as well. And that's one of the things that we want to fight for. Like these people-powered campaigns, where those presentations are made to the council to be voted on, we need to fight as hard as we can to get those decisions made in local communities, to go out into communities, get people organised, get them meeting together, talking about development of their communities. Because as we've heard, the lack of sports facilities comes up all the time. You need a combination of your local development plan and your budget coming together to ensure that these facilities are built. And it's not just sports, it's arts, it's culture facilities, it's community centres, all of these things. People are crying out for them. And since COVID, social isolation has gone through the roof. And people need places to meet, people need community, they need public spaces that are free for them to go to. Because that's one of the other major problems that we have in Limerick at the moment, is that there is a massive rise in in-work poverty. You have so many people who are working more than 40 hours a week just to keep food on the table. You have parents who are cutting back on their own food intake to ensure that their children are fed. They're embarrassed that they can't bring their children out for the weekend, go to the cinema, or just to go swimming, or anything like that. They have to pay out of pocket for everything, and they just can't get by. So I think we need to revive Limerick's radical history of radical trade union action from the general strike in 1919 through to workers taking over the mills and the creameries throughout the War of Independence. They managed to double their wages nearly while also cutting the prices for people who were buying the milk and buying the bread. So that's what we need to be fighting for. We need to go and use council contracts, put terms into those contracts to ensure that unionised companies get a preference, that a living wage is mandated by all council contracts, and then fight to get all of those contracts brought back in under the council directly. Because all of this outsourcing has just been increasing the wealth for a few individuals while reducing the quality of services delivered to everybody. But again, that's not going to happen on its own. It's not going to happen with a few councillors who were brought in. It will take people power, people fighting together for this change. And then finally, one of the things that we want to do with the new mayoral position, whether we get into the council, whether we get into the mayor, is take some of that new public funding and to challenge that Ernst & Young report that came out that said if we make free public transport, only 1% of people will get out of their cars and use it. Well, let's prove it, There's money coming into the council now as part of this role. We should go and have free public transport in Limerick. You could do a trial of it, try to get the money from the central government on top of it. We can see what happened in Montpellier when they brought in the same. They had a 30% increase in ridership. 1% versus 30%. Where do we fall on that? So I think we need to see free public transport. The money is there to do it. And we need to start increasing our public spending in councils in general, bring it under democratic control, and try to ensure that people have a say over their communities and over development.
Very good, Rory. Thank you. And well done to you for taking on this, a big challenge to do both, but fair play. So I'm not going to go around the room introducing you all, but I'd like to give all of the candidates who are here, and again to thank you all for coming and for doing what you're doing. I'm very proud of all of you for what you're doing. If anyone would like to add something, or say something that hasn't been said, or maybe repeat something that's been said, and do it briefly, we'd be delighted to record this. So hands up, those who wanted. Shay, and say who you are and where you're running and all.
Shay the Strange, running.
Sorry, hold on a second. We get the camera on you. Oh, come up here then. Yeah. I didn't know what you were pointing at there. It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Shay the Strange, I'm running in the Crumlin-Kimmage Mines area. And the big thing that's coming up on the doors for me at the moment is the lack of public services being supplied by Dublin City Council. And it basically comes down to a lot of these services have been privatised by Dublin City Council, and it's just not fulfilling the needs of the community. One of the massive issues that is in the Crumlin area, the old council stock housing, is black mold.
Yeah.
And that has to be addressed. It is killing people, literally killing people. And if we don't address it soon,
sorry, keep going.
Sorry, it needs to be addressed as soon as possible. I know cases have been taken in the past by residents, local to myself, in House, where they've gone to the UN and they've done their case in relation to the black mold in houses. We have to put it up as one of our priorities in that campaign. Good
for you, Shay. Well done. Anybody else want to raise issues or say a few words, introduce themselves? No. Kelly? Kelly wants to come up and they'll take you. Good on you, Kelly. Kelly's a latecomer to the list.
Thanks so much. Yeah, absolutely 100% agree with all the issues that's been said this morning with climate action, housing, with Palestine, and I'm really proud of the party and honoured to represent. In my area in Greystone, in County Wicklow, what we've seen is massive private development companies come in and make huge profits on housing estates, but there are no matching services. We have a number of children in the area who are still waiting on their school fees, and it's causing an immense amount of stress on families, and the children are calling themselves the leftover children. So what I would love to see, what I think people before profit can work on and deliver is community with school places, with sports facilities, with homes, with services to match the needs of the people that live there.
Thanks very much, Kelly. Thank you. Do you want to say a few words? And introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, it looks like
All the time. Yeah.
Do you want to sit up at the...
It's not a good sign.
yeah.
You can make a point about how we're not funded by big business. Do you know what I mean? So we're used to duct tape.
Exactly.
My name is Shane Laird. I'm running in Cork South Central. From my experience of going around canvassing, housing is clearly the biggest issue this country is facing. Also just basic maintenance of our services and our city. We need to see a publicly owned development company to deliver affordable social housing, which is severely limited at the moment. And we do need to push for better free public transportation to ensure that we get more cars off our roads, to ensure that, and to just ensure that our environmental issues are properly addressed.
Thanks very much. Bernard, do you want to say a few words? Now, we'll have to speed these things up, but come up and sit down here, Bernard, please, so we can record you. And introduce yourself. Thanks.
Yeah.
you know, Berwick, I the Reno Cantar, Dublin Bay North. Since I was just thinking back the other day that we were talking, we started off 2019, our first campaign, which was to save the 123 bus, which was going to be taken away from the Bus Connects, and we gathered up the most signatures of any group in any area, and any bus route managed to save it, another bus route for fallen. Since that, it's been sort of victory after victory, if I'm honest. Like, we started up the Access for All campaign with the help of hugely with people for profit. We invited everyone else, but no one took us up in it.
and we managed to secure a massive victory on that, whereby funding has been allocated hundreds of millions for all the train stations in the whole island of Ireland to be made accessible. There's 147 train stations in this country, and they're all been made accessible. When we first started the lease and this, Dunleary used to be out consistently. On any given day, it would be 12. A couple of weeks ago, they all funds were made available because we brought the community along. Scrap the Green Paper Coalition again, people for profit central to that activist, providing all the government back down. They scrapped that green paper. That's us working really well with people, and in particularly people who need us to work with the most. Our disabled community is probably a community that needs us the very most, and we have now positioned ourselves as a party who are the voice